Well, I'm a lonely old man. I'm 56.
I'm 64 years old, divorced, single. Who would figure at my age I would be single, but I am. I'm looking for the last love of my life. I don't want to die alone.
These are just horrifying statistics. More and more Americans living alone and lonely. And loneliness is a very dangerous condition. Why? Because we evolved for social connection. On the savannah, back in evolution times, a lonely human was most likely a dead human.
I think the majority of men don't even get, like, men's life generally, average men, is a very lonely existence. Whereas women don't get. Okay, so an average woman, can walk out of her house looking regular, in a tracksuit or like with a bonnet on or whatever, and still get attention from men. Men will be like, "Hey, how you doing? Hey, what you doing?" And the average man walking out his house does not get any attention. His DMs are dry. Yeah, he doesn't get any attention on the street.
Sounds like a rough life.
Right,
Y'all be easy out there, though.
I'm just saying, like, the average guy doesn't get the same thing that an average woman would get.
That's what Andrew Tate says, that like women don't know real loneliness because there's always someone that'll date a girl. Like even like the girls 100%. On 500 Pound Life have like boyfriends, but
I used to be a mortician, and women died surrounded by family. Men died alone in a little apartment in they tidy whities. Okay, eating cans of soup. Men die alone, sir. Sprinkle, sprinkle.
Good morning, ma'am. I agree. Before I went to the Army, it was a mortuary affairs specialist. I spent a lot of time as a first call person, you know, the guy who goes to homicides, coroner's office, car accidents, homes, nursing homes. And I will agree, you know, a lot of men, black and white, I've picked up were by themselves. And I think a lot of men who have a problem with what you're saying, getting in their feelings like they found extra money in their right pocket, is because they think you're dissing them. But unfortunately, what you're saying is true. And as a man, in my personal experience, I've dealt with that. And it comes down to the fact that a lot of men definitely lead with this independence. You know, I can manage, I can still do this, I got this. They still want to prove that they can take care of themselves. And then when that time comes, they end up by themselves. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say that they're assholes or anything, but they've convinced a lot of people, to include their family, that Paw still got it. You know, my dad still got it, you know, because it's that, you know, I'm a man.
But there are men out there that have no attention from women. No, it's actually more in reverse. All right. Again, I always say the loneliest person is a single man.
Homegirls that's sitting at the house knocking on 40, that she is not lonelier than these fellas.
And this is one of the reasons why the rate of suicide is higher amongst men than women. But at the end of the day, there are much more lonely men who can do nothing about, they can't do nothing about it right this minute.
Not even from a dramatic place, but maybe from a depressed place. How do men look at that? Because, you know, this day and age, we're all going through something.
Sexless young men, typically throughout history, throughout time, have been the group to worry about. So strongly associated with violence that we call it the young male syndrome in our field, that this has always been a huge problem. Now, throughout history, you had kind of cultural or social institutions to deal with your population of incels. So, for example, the monastery would be one for sure, give a high status position to kind of channel these extra guys into. You'd create Vikings out of them. The Vikings were likely incels, not the sexy kind of Netflix Vikings that you think from the TV shows. The Portuguese explorers, there's strong evidence that they were incels, basically, sent on purpose missions to kind of basically get away from causing trouble around for everyone else.
I mean, can you define them as incels when sexual violence was a part of that conquest?
Right. So that's also a good point, that the motivation of acquiring mates has been a motivating factor for a lot of men to join terrorist groups. Even jihadi violence, it's the promise of brides in this life or the next. And when you talk to anthropologists who, there's one, Napoleon Chagnon, and he did some research with the Yanomamo, who are an extremely violent hunter-gatherer a society in Bolivia, and he told them about why people in the West go to war to spread democracy, free speech, things like this. And they were just falling off their chair laughing. They were like, what? Why would you? And he said, well, why do you go to war? And they were like, only one reason, to get mates.
The lonely man epidemic has gotten so bad. Some of my professors have actually started talking about it in classes in the last couple of years, and about like the way that women are starting to thrive and survive and just like live beyond our means, but in the best way possible, and how men are holding themselves back, causing this lonely man epidemic where you would rather hold a podcast room full of guys and talk about women's body count all together, or invite a woman and make fun of her, than go to therapy. Like, you do realize that it's probably cheaper to go to therapy than start a podcast, right?
When it comes to the loneliness epidemic, in 1990, the number of men who said that they had 6 or more close friends was around about 55%. In 2020, that dropped to 21%. It's less than half. 21% of men say that they have less than 6 close friends. The number of men who say that they have 0 close friends has increased by 5-fold from 1990, and it's now at 15%. 15% of men say that they have 0 close friends. I don't know the stats for women. It seems like women are able to hold on to social groups a little bit more effectively than men are. The loneliness epidemic does seem to be hitting men a little bit more hard.
We hear a lot about the male loneliness epidemic, and we hear a lot about how men are unaliving themselves at rates higher than ever seen before. But isn't there a male anger epidemic that keeps people from reaching and healing that male loneliness? What strikes me is that no matter what message I put out on here and how supportive I make it about men, I will always get a lot of pushback and negative, angry comments from men. And I guess part of it is that the internet is a great equalizer. It's that place where men are no longer invisible. In fact, they're in good company with other men who share their woes. They can band together and create movements like Passport Bros or men going their own way. But does that actually get them any closer towards their real goal of being seen, validated, and accepted? I mean, even in my dating journey, I've lost count of how many men I've come across that I knew were struggling. They were battling demons they couldn't even put a voice to. And no matter how much kindness and compassion I showed them, no matter how much space I held for them, they were just unable to take that life vest because they had so much discomfort around even acknowledging or identifying their feelings. What I have found is that so many men are highly unreachable, but also deeply crave being reached. So what's the solution? What is the seed that can start that shift?
Hey there. I wanted to start to talk about loneliness and what we can do about it. I know it is an epidemic that maybe doesn't get the attention that it deserves, and I think we need to really face it head on, especially men. I know men don't really open up about their feelings. I personally am 52. I've never been married. I don't have any kids, and I live alone. And so my life can be incredibly lonely.
I've opened a can of worms. Good Lord. I'm so sorry that I pissed in everybody's Cheerios yesterday and today. Goodness gracious. Maybe we should actually talk about the real topic. The topic at hand of the male loneliness epidemic. And why that is. Why do you think that there is a male loneliness epidemic? See, from somebody who has done a lot of videos and men seem to come at me directly and they're triggered and they get mad that I have some sort of commentary about something that I don't know anything about, I'm asking. And honestly, I feel like I already know the answer. I really do feel like I already know the answer because of all of the generalizations that men have put in their comment section, and just alone men who like adamantly hate women.
All right, y'all. So I just broke up with my ex of 5 years. And Hey, as a man to man, can we have a little conversation here? This is your ego wanting to sabotage the best situation you could ever have in your entire life because you feel like she's taking the role of the man rather than you feeling like you can still be the man while existing beneath her. You got to remember, when you get into relationships, this has nothing to do with one person being dominant over the other. It has everything to do with partners in the relationship unconditionally caring for each other. There are no rules to relationships. That's why that's why divorce rates are so high. People are following rules that were never made for them. I feel so horrible because I think this is going to be actually happening more and more in the future. A lot of guys who have amazing girlfriends are going to be breaking up with them not because the woman, there's anything wrong with the woman. I mean, you heard this guy say it. There was nothing wrong with her. And the only way I can justify that happening to a man who, like, apparently there's no issues, but like, I have to break up with you, it's an ego thing. And there was no conversation around, hey, how can I still feel like a man even though I make less than you? How can I still feel like the man that I desire to be even if I'm in the submissive role, the role that is being the dependent role? But because that conversation never gets had, and we have more and more men every single day saying, I'm not going to open up to my woman, I'm not going to speak to a girl about nothing but sex, blah, blah, blah. Like, it confuses me what you guys even speak to women about. Like, do you just act like you care until you realize that, like, you aren't the person you say you are? And then you leave so they don't find out that you aren't the person you say you are faster than you can expose it? Now remember, this isn't nothing against the dude who made the video. I'm just saying, like, gender roles aren't real, and you guys, especially in today's day in society where the average individual human being can't even support themselves, gender roles are going to kill you. Trying to uphold them, trying to adhere to them, trying to be like, oh, you know what? Well, it's like, I just don't like her because I am basically the woman and she wears the pants in this relationship. It's an ego thing, bro. And no other relationship will work for you. Because this was somebody who unconditionally gave to you, bro, before you had shit. Meaning that she saw something in you that you couldn't even see in yourself. And now you're sacrificing that for somebody who's already going to have you. Like somebody who's going to get you at the end of the finish line, and then you're going to complain that no girl wants the real you, they just want what you have. Isn't it crazy how that shit works out? Like, I reject all the women who loved me before I was the man I thought I was. But then I chase all the girls who only care about the material man that I am and not the real human man that I am. And then I continue to not be emotionally present or available, or to feel insecure and not know how to communicate it, not speak to a therapist, not have a healthy community of men that can give me some reason. Because think about this, we're doing all of this bullshit in dating culture. We're not even doing this in like the real, like, relationship shit. And maybe that's one of the issues that's stopping us from having people getting married in marriage culture. It's people not even being able to make it through a dating process. And I'm not talking about struggle love here. But the second somebody exposes that they're a human being, it's like we automatically think that they're not the person for us and it's time to go to the next one. And you could attribute that to social media or whatever you want to, but... And this is where we as men need to truly, truly understand what accountability means. Like, it's more than just go to a therapist. Like, this is where we as men need to understand, hey, you know what? I don't know where I finished the last part of this video because this is a stitch and it's so shitty with editing. But to conclude this whole entire video, I just want to say the male loneliness epidemic that we're about to see, and it's not going to just be loneliness. It's going to be emotional dysregulation. It's going to be suicide. It's going to be crazy mental health issues. But I mean, we should have expected that. This is the consequence of living in the patriarchy. All these systems are meant to self-destruct and only serve the 1%. How beautiful is that? But the male loneliness epidemic is going to be from men who don't want to address the soul that they've never cared for that sits behind their ego. And in a world where people, like the average person, does not have access to having their needs met, basic needs met, people, the only thing that they'll have to compete in this social game, this world that we play in, is going to be their ego. And you don't want to know what people would do when compromised in a position to choose between their soul and their ego, especially in this world that we live in. But again, I don't know too much about that creator other than the fact that these conversations are so important in the men's community because at least exposing them gives us an opportunity to address them. At least it does. It doesn't matter who's wrong or right in this situation. If you are able to keep yourself safe and the other person in the relationship safe, that's dope. That's what we should be prioritizing, not how it looks or how it feels or what forgive me, I'm saying everything now. If everybody's taken care of, there are no issues here. But I just want you to know that you might have more control in these situations than you think you do. And it might come on the other side of doing something that you would have never expected yourself as a man to have to do.
So let's talk about the male loneliness epidemic because it has been all over my FYP. It keeps coming back up. It's been several people have done studies on it. And to me, it boils down to a few things. To solve a loneliness problem within yourself, like if you are lacking a relationship, romantic relationship, friendships, immediate family, whatever that is, you are in charge of creating connections. It is you who solves your own loneliness problem by getting a hobby and finding other people who do that, by engaging with people on the internet can feel like that sometimes. If your goal is to find a partner, then trying to date and meet people. And men so very often do not fill that role in their own lives. It is their moms and then their spouses who arrange date nights, who arrange community time, who invite the people to the party, who know about the party and schedule it so that you go. So I think when people talk about the male loneliness epidemic, all it says to me is that you have not taken control of your own life. You are waiting for the community to arrive for you. Just like when you were a kid, chicken noodle soup did when you were sick. But newsflash, you're the mom now. You're the person who creates your own community. It is not someone else's job to create your community. And this does not cover all situations. I understand that this is like a thing worthy of talking about, and men need to talk about their feelings and express them way more often than they do now. But the notion that this exists and it's up to someone else to solve this problem is ridiculous to me.
So at this point, I'm assuming we've all seen the article about the rise of lonely men because relationship standards are rising. And this reminds me of my favorite thing I've ever seen. I'm not too sure where it originally came from, but when I saw it, it was a tweet that said, when men no longer were a necessity, they had to become likable, and that's where they're failing. When they were needed for bank accounts and properties and to exist in society, they could get away with being shit. And they've held on to that mentality even though that's no longer true. When they existed in this time and they had that bargaining chip, they can exude control and they can dictate what the relationship roles were, ones that benefited them. But now that they don't have this anymore, they are still taught this mentality, and it doesn't work in their favor. Because if you think about it, any relationship based on control and dominance, where one side is getting everything and the other is just giving, it's not going to last long. Why would anyone want to be in that? I mean, there are times and places for that, but not your entire lifestyle. And I think this is why people are flocking to those influencers who are talking about feminine presenting people in the same manner, saying they can control them, that they can demand this out of their women, and this is the standard, and how they are high value men. And let me tell you, it's not going to work. It doesn't work for them. It's not going to work for you. It just doesn't work. It's a facade to sell you a pyramid scheme, you dumb bitch. So the more you try to be this controlling entity in a relationship that was outdated 70 years ago, the more lonely you are going to be. And the longer...
Guys, ChatGPT is about to make the male loneliness epidemic literally so much worse. ChatGPT hugely outperforms men in one very specific area, and that is emotional intelligence, which is saying a lot considering AI doesn't even have feelings.